Hello everybody and welcome to Homestead for a Living. I'm doing this video today inside. There's a bit of a windstorm outside and it's just rendering it impossible to really hear the audio out there. So today's topic is 10 ways to feed your community. And for those of us who are really aware of what's going on in the world, we're scrambling to feed our families and ourselves first, of course. And community might seem like a second priority, but a lot of folks I know come to this channel from a preparedness standpoint and from the point of prepping. There's only so much you can do to protect yourself against hungry people. If you are growing food or if you have a large food supply and your neighbors start getting really hungry, there's only so many hours you can stay awake, and there's only so much you can do to hide that food and that food production. And eventually, those very hungry people will outwit you. There's something special that happens in the brain of an animal or a human when they get very hungry to where they become very cunning and the entirety of their focus is on obtaining food for themselves and their family. And oftentimes morals get thrown out the window and they will do anything to feed themselves. And so it's imperative that we do not have hungry neighbors. That's your best prep, is don't have hungry neighbors. Solve the problem at its root. Fortunately, feeding our communities is fun, dynamic, it's exciting, it's what we're called to do. For those of us coming from a Christian perspective, it's literally what we're told to do is feed the hungry, from Christ himself. So like that's a thing that you have to do and you don't have a choice. But it's also, it builds community and you start to create this network. Lone wolves will not stand in hard times. And so when you start getting your community prepared for this in advance, you start to build those networks and you start to build those connections, and it's just joyous and it's wonderful. The connection you make with people is great. So let's just talk about some ways to do that. I'm just listing 10, but there are many more. And these are ways to kind of cooperatively or by yourself start to stand up food production on a bigger scale within your community, anywhere you're at. So the first one is easy and it's one you can do yourself, and that's buy local. And I know that sounds a little trite and we all know that we should do that. But it really is imperative that right now you start buying from your local farmers because they're under attack. Our government and the corporations that own it are attacking small family farms. They have been for decades, but it's ramping up rapidly. Everything from the intentional hyperinflation that they're causing to drive up the cost of fuel, and the shortage on fertilizers, and all of those things are creating a plethora of problems for farmers that they just can't fix other than by raising their prices. And eventually, of course, I'm sure they'll come along with price fixing and other schemes that will basically artificially lower the price of food to where that might help out the person going to the grocery store, but not in the long run, because it's actually going to collapse the family farms because they won't be able to sell their food at a profit. But it'll be real good for those that are consolidating power over all of the farms and buying up all of the land. That's how government subsidization works. That's why they give money to giant grain producers in the Midwest and have all these bailouts and insurance schemes. It's so that they can basically centralize control over them and yank out the rug out from under those producers when they want, after artificially lowering the price, so then they can control the food and then control the people, of course. That's what they've been doing for a long, long time. And it's not helping farmers, and it's not helping people, and it's not helping lower the price of food in the long run. They know exactly what they're doing. It's time for all of us to be aware and fight them with our wallets first. It hurts to buy local because it's more expensive. And the reason it's more expensive is because the price of food grown by a local family farmer is reality. The price reflects reality. Go start gardening if you haven't. You'll realize it's a tremendous amount of work and energy and inputs to create food. And you're not going to want to let go of it cheaply, because that's a lot of labor, it's a lot of infrastructure, it's a lot of gambling, it's very hard, and it's a lot of knowledge and skill. So food should be expensive, and that's why you should also start becoming a food producer, because that's going to benefit you in the long run. So start buying local, because also you need to keep them in business, and you need to be first on their list. You need to be the person they know that they always sell their milk or their meat or their produce to. And that would apply for buying feed for your animals and as well. Start developing those relationships, because those will also turn into other things, other opportunities. As we've started to do that, that's turned into them buying things from us. That's turned into connections where we do business together and we create businesses together and food production together. So just start buying local just as much as you can possibly afford. And if you have to, try to barter, try to do whatever you can, exchange some labor, whatever it takes. The second one is pretty obvious, and that's garden. Of course, just start growing your own food now. As our food systems collapse, we need to take the burden off of the existing producers, and the way to do that is just garden. And of course, under garden, I would say also, raise your own meat to the extent you're available. Even if you're in a little apartment, you can do this. You can raise quail. They're sitting right here in our office right now. We also have a lonely duck in there as well. And it's easy to source food for them. There's a million ways to do that, even if feed is not readily available. So stand up your own food production first. Just get yourself and your family fed. That will help your community. It will take the burden off of whatever other resources are there. And along those lines is also learn to forage. Foraging is truly, it can be a mainstay of your food. Obviously, that needs to be done respectfully to the environment. You can't simply just strip out all of the native species and leave nothing behind. You have to forage in a way that propagates and spreads the plants that you want to eat. What we do around here is we're foraging something, let's say it's dead nettle or wild garlic or chickweed. First of all, we'll spread that around the garden. If it grows readily, I don't care that it's a weed. I want food that tastes good. And much of the time, that is just native weeds. And we can add compost and water and actually treat them like garden plants and really turn that foraging more into farming, but there's kind of a blurred line there. And foraging is really critical, and it's also really critical to your health. I believe that nature gives us, it knows what our bodies needs, and it gives it to us in the form of native plants or of weeds. I think there's a cycle there. I think that when a mosquito bites you, it takes your blood, and that's really like a nurse taking a syringe of your blood, and that mosquito dies, it goes into the ground. The ground will receive what's there, and all of that soil life will work together to say, look, there's an iron deficiency in this blood. We need to put more of that into the plants. Let's do that. You know, I don't really have a scientific case for that. It's just a thing that I think, it's a hypothesis. So learn to forage. It is going to help your health. There's natural antihistamines. There's natural everything out there that's going to really benefit your health. I've seen such a change in my own health ever since I started foraging. The next thing is farm. After you start gardening, start farming. Start raising food for other people. For us, that's as simple as our main focus is simply selling the surplus. We're trying to grow more food than we need, and then we'll sell the surplus. That's why we're pursuing a CSA model, because rather than try to say we're going to grow a bunch of greens year-round or a bunch of tomatoes year-round and take part in this destructive non-seasonal eating system that we have, rather, we want to actually grow food realistically, and the things that grow easily are what we're going to sell. If people don't want to buy it, that's fine, we'll eat it, or we'll give it to our animals. But we're trying to create a base of customers who will actually buy in season, and they'll buy a wide variety of things that come from a polyculture type farm such as ours. So start a farm. When we started our farm, we had 64 square feet of bed space. We had 4 little 4x4 spots, and I just started the farm, bought a website name, Hollow Top Farms, and I spoke it into being. I said, I have a farm, because a farm's a business. Whenever they started Facebook or Amazon or any other company, they didn't have warehouses, they didn't have their whole business structure there. They had an idea and a name and a commitment. And so that's what your farm needs to start out with. Even if you don't have the land, even if you're living in your car right now, start a farm. Everybody needs to farm. Another one is community garden. This is something you can do also if you don't have land. We've started 2 so far in our community. We're starting work on a 3rd. And a community garden doesn't just feed people around you, it gets people engaged into the process of making food. It helps them see how easy it can be. Because while food growing is difficult, it's also easy at the same time. The one we're doing is nearest to us is at a local church, and we're starting with really easy crops, and we're getting the youth group involved. So that way these young kids are getting some immediate success and some instant gratification with things like radishes and just stuff that grows easy. They're not just taking that produce back to their family, but they're taking the knowledge that they can garden, and they're taking the knowledge of how to garden. So that's a really rewarding thing, and it's a really fun thing to do. And you can look around you wherever you're at, your church, your school, your company you work at, public land, whatever is around you, you can start a community garden. You can feed a lot of people, but also get a lot of people involved in the production of food. It's a lot of fun. That's one of the things I enjoy the most. Another one is start Cooperative Ventures. Now, this is a broad category, one we're working very hard on right now. But that could mean a lot of different things. One thing we're working on specifically is a private members organization where essentially people can join as either a producer or as a consumer, and there's going to be a contract that protects those who are within the group. So essentially, because that's the way that the USDA and other organizations are coming after farmers, is with all this regulation saying you can't sell a nursery plant without getting our permits, or you can't sell meat without our stamp of approval, you can't sell milk, you can't do any of this, and if you do, you're going to get sued, or we're going to charge you with something. And so this is a way of saying, actually, this is a private members organization, and what we're not selling things to the public. I don't want to get too into that, but essentially, we'll do a later video about that, but essentially it's just another protection, a liability protection for farmers, because lawsuits are a way they're coming after farmers really hard. So for example, when you join the PMA, you'll sign an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, and you'll sign something that says, I'm not going to sue anybody within this organization over anything I've purchased or done business with within the organization. So the NDA is basically saying, I can't reveal what happened within the organization. So that way, if you're trying to sue somebody for something, saying, you sold me milk that was not pasteurized, well, you can't technically bring that suit because that would be violating the non-disclosure agreement. So basically what we're doing is setting up a contract and paying for the contract to be drawn up that will protect the members, and then making that organization available to the public and bringing members in. And that will offer other things. We're also going to work on a website that will offer, really try to streamline the process of finding food around you. And then we're also building a local cooperative venture as well. We're partnering with local farmers. We're meeting with some of them this weekend. And saying, kind of pooling our resources. We have some farmers who are doing really well, growing a lot of produce, but they just sell at the farmers market and they don't seem to be selling as much as they could. But we're starting up a CSA and we're not going to have enough. We have Gabby, who's a marketing expert. We're probably not going to have too much trouble selling CSA memberships. And so we're starting, instead of just a CSA on our own farm, we're starting a cooperative CSA with other farmers. We also have some neighbors and stuff who are going to be selling off their surplus to us, and then we resell it. And of course, we kind of act as the certifier, saying these are people we trust that hold to our standards of regenerative agriculture and food safety. But that's just one kind of cooperative venture you could start. There are many out there. There's a whole world of things. But basically partnering with other people, starting businesses together, partnering with buyers, partnering with other producers, and creating really big things cooperatively. A really fun way to do things as well. Another one is classes, whether you put them on or just bring in another expert and organize them. We've done both. With Back to the Land Festival, we brought in experts from all over the country on everything from butchery to foraging. This one will be bringing folks from everything from blacksmithing to sawmill to operation, regenerative grazing, all these topics. So even if we don't have the expertise, we're bringing in teachers and organizing these classes. And the things that we are experts on, we are teaching to our community as quickly as we can. We're going to teach classes at the community garden. We have a community center where we're going to be teaching some classes at. Gabby is also teaching classes. She's doing one today, and it's a marketing class just to help local small business owners and producers really learn to market their products. So whatever classes you can attend as well as create are very helpful. Another one is offering labor. No matter who you are, a lawyer or somebody with a master's degree, you're not above farm work. It's deeply rooted in who we are and what we are supposed to do. We are all supposed to work the land and get our hands in the soil. So offer your labor to local farmers. That can be life-saving. Right now, what they're doing is they're trying to keep people from working. What they do is they subsidize everybody's lifestyles, basically throw stimuluses out there, throw free government money, which is really just stolen money that they steal from you. They throw that at people and then, of course, wonder why people don't want to work. Well, why would you work if you can get all this free money? Particularly when they shut down businesses and it seems hopeless to start a business when the government's just going to come attack it and lock it down. So they're attacking labor, and this is really hurting the farmers. And they're also like attacking labor through doing all the testing and stuff that like, oh, you can't work now for 2 weeks because, you know, you might catch a cold or something like that. And so they're very intentionally going after the labor force, and that's killing farmers. So go offer your labor. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to develop a relationship. You're probably going to get a lot of free stuff. It's going to be an incredible relationship if it's with a good person. I mean, that could be as simple as offering to farm sit for a new homesteader or something like that too. You know, we do that around here so they can have a life, so they can have vacations, so they can go do things they need to. And that favor gets returned to us so that we are not trapped here on our homestead, because it's very hard to leave a homestead or a farm when you have animals. Another one is get involved in the business of farm infrastructure, whatever that means. For me, that means I build water barrels for water catchment off of roofs to help small homesteaders be able to get their own sovereign water supply for their gardens and for their own drinking and cooking, as well as building greenhouses, rabbit hutches, chicken coops, things like that. That's part of my design business I do. That's another key thing I do is I do permaculture design on farms, and consultations. So whatever things that interest me, that's what I'm trying to build my skills in, and then put out into the community and just create this resilience around me. I'm helping my neighbor get his water catchment going. I'm helping all my neighbors get self-sufficient. Sometimes I profit from it, sometimes I don't. It's a business, but it's also a passion. And it's to me, it's not just selfless, it's selfish. Again, I want my neighbors to not be hungry and not be thirsty, because that keeps me and my family safe. And another one is start investing in alternative energy or in the business of that, because a lot of the choke points right now that's killing agriculture is fossil fuels, it's fuel in general, it's electricity. So much control over energy is centralized already and becoming more centralized. And that's a choke point where they're really putting a lot of farmers out of business. So make sure you're either designing your systems to be passive and not require fuel, or you're investing in alternatives. You know, solar may not be perfect, but right now you can still relatively cheaply access solar panels, and it's a good time to start getting them up there, and also figuring out how to do passive energy. That could be passive solar, water heating, and just designing your systems to not need too much energy. That's what we do around here. So hopefully that's inspiring. Just 10 ways, and I know there's a million more. So if you can think of a way to really help start standing up food production in your community, please leave that in the comments, and we'll chat about that and share a lot of ideas, because a lot of community can just start right here on the channel. Hope that's helpful to y'all. In the meantime, stay safe, be well, and happy homesteading.